recording. I'll come on the studio mic when we're
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Well, are you
We're-
guys ready?
we're ready. When you're ready, here comes Roger back,
No, Ryan.
or Ryan back. Here comes Ryan back, and Roger's in there with you.
Okay, well.
We're gonna have Randy play the lighthouse, and they're gonna start it with him playing the lighthouse.
All right, count 1 minute and we'll go.
Okay. Baptist Church out on Taylor Mill, Highway 16, I believe it is.
Yes.
Out just a ways outside of Covington and out on the countryside, the beautiful countryside of Kenton County.
Amen.
And he's been the pastor there for 30-some years. Well, the question is, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? That's what the lighthouse is all about. It tells the captain of the ship that he's close to the shore and guides him so that he doesn't get in bad waters, rough waters, rocks. The lighthouse. The lighthouse. Are you ready? Are you ready? Where have you been? What are you seeking? And where are you going? And are you ready for the Lord? And that's what the lighthouse is all about. And you know, Randy, we just finished our primary elections here in Kentucky. And I'd like to take us to the Lord in a word of prayer, if I might first. Our Heavenly Father, elections and choosing our leaders is an extremely important function in our democratic republic. All of us have a responsibility, as you say, to pick our leaders with godly principles and to exercise the freedoms that you have given us and that our soldiers have died for and continue to die for. And this is our Memorial Day weekend, where we recognize the memories of those who have held our freedoms for us with their lives, with their injuries, and with their hearts and souls. So Lord, today we ask that all of our citizens, elected officials, those who ran for public office, those who attempted to win and fought the hard battle, all of us come together and work for a better America and a better world and a better, more honest and more godly principled government. Those are our prayers today, that we will find the lighthouse and let it guide us to where we are ready for the Lord. In Jesus' name, we do ask it. Amen. You know, Randy, campaigns get exciting. Having been in several campaigns myself, I never will forget what Congressman John Breckinridge said to me about Abraham Lincoln. And that was basically when we were in the campaign and I was running it for the congressman many years ago, back in the 70s, later worked for him. He said, remember, John, how many races that Abraham Lincoln ran for and lost before he won a race? Well, Congressman Breckinridge was the same way. He lost many times and won several times. And I lost many times and won several times. So it's an experience that's, shall we say, different. So that's the reason June and I, when we were running one statewide campaign, I think it was for state treasurer, we decided to not only campaign, but to do something constructive during the campaign, because I'd already been to every single county in the state. I had a little diary I carried with me to document it, little red diary. But we were going back to all 120 counties, so we decided that win, lose, or draw, we would do something in the campaign with our expenditures that was productive and educational. And that's when we decided, thanks to Miss June, who, as I've told you many times, is the smartest move I've ever made. You agree with that, don't
Yes,
you?
yeah.
Well, Gail's the smartest move you ever made. We're not dumb.
No.
We might be from the country, but we know how to plow the ground.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to my thought there, we learned that, and we did film the history of every county in the state, and June did most of those interviews going around the whole state of Kentucky, and then we donated a set of those tapes to every county library in the state, so that folks in far western Kentucky could see what life was like in northern Kentucky and eastern Kentucky, and vice versa. And so we tried to make it a constructive campaign, and I want to commend the people that run their campaigns and run them without attacks, personal attacks on their opponents. I know it's tempting to do that, but sometimes it's just not good for the whole government to do that. So if you won your race out there, or if you lost your race out there, practice the art of love, the gift of God, His greatest gift, and pitch in and help your opponent in the next election, and or help him or her serve the government. Because after all, that's what we're all about, is having good, honest public servants. And I have to say I tremendously admire anybody, win or lose, that sticks their neck out there and puts their lifeline right out there, where they are not just close to where the lighthouse is, but they're sometimes into the rocks where you run into trouble. And it can be very painful. Now I know one of the candidates that won. In fact, I was sort of proud of my predictions. You know, all of my predictions won that I predicted that would win, except one or two. And I felt pretty good about it. And one of those was Terry King Schober, who won her primary. Now, of course, she's for a family court judge. She'll have to run again in November. There'll be a runoff, you know. But she ran first, and I have to commend both her opponents. I know that the fellow that got knocked out in the primary, Peter Rouse, just a very super fine gentleman, and ran a very stellar campaign. They all ran good campaigns, and I said it was going to be close. And the sad thing is, the point I'm trying to get to, is the low turnout. Now, I don't think it's any good for me to come on here and chastise the public, because it's your right to vote and it's your right not to vote. But there is a godly principle that says we should work for the good. Jesus says, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's, right? And we should be involved, and we should go out and vote. We should study the candidates and go out and vote. Our voter turnout all across Kentucky was low, particularly in northern Kentucky was low. Kenton County was very low, about 10 or 11%. And Boone County, not much higher, all of them below the 15% mark. That's sad. Now, some of the other counties in the state were as high as 20–25%. So we need to really work on that here in northern Kentucky, and a big part of that is that we've lost the Kentucky Post, one of the major newspapers in northern Kentucky, and I have to compliment them on the fact that all those years that they were here in northern Kentucky, and when we had a base of the Kentucky Enquirer in northern Kentucky, we were, frankly, had a lot more coverage of the campaigns in detail, and a lot more stories were written. And it's those stories that generate the interest for the public, and even knowing that there's a race going on. And so we miss that. And that's one thing I appreciate about the weekly newspapers now that have started back up, the River City News and the Tribune that does an excellent job. They have really covered and tried to cover, and some of the radio stations, the one out of Grant County, and of course my favorite radio station, WIOK 107.5 FM on the radio dial. Tri-State Gospel, the nonprofit corporation there, the Gil and Janet Hammond that run the Christian radio station out of Falmouth. And so I appreciate what they do to cover the elections. But we had a situation where there wasn't too many issues on the primary ballot that bring people out, but our last week's guest, Judge Gary Moore, won his race, and quite handily. But it was a hard-fought race. I'll have to say that. Not only did he win, but also all of the fiscal court in Boone County won their race, except Charlie Walton. He lost his commissioner's seat, and Jesse Brewer, I think is the gentleman's name, won that race. And the one thing that did surprise me about the 4th Congressional District was that in Northern Kentucky, I picked who would win here in Northern Kentucky. Her name was Mrs. Platt, I believe it is, Pilat. And the sad thing for her, to be honest, was that the gentleman from Oldham County, who's in that 4th Congressional District, won the race, basically because the turnout was higher in the other counties than it was in Northern Kentucky. And she ran a very good campaign, I thought, and was professionally done. But you must always remember that it's the person that gets out the votes that makes the difference. And that's a little lesson for us here right in Northern Kentucky, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell counties. The size of our counties and the population in our counties dwarf the rest of the district, but we have not been participating like we should, voter-wise. And that affects us because the closer to home that your elected official is, the more knowledge he has about the area. You know, for instance, someone in Kenton County or Boone County or Campbell County would know a lot more than about the area here than someone from Oldham or down far in eastern Kentucky. That district runs the whole river there in the 4th Congressional District. And so I just wanted to point those things out. And while I'm getting ready to talk about some of the other primaries, have you got another song you'd like to play for us?
Oh, yeah, I know one.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. By the way, we're going to get a little into Pentecost a little later here too.
I love this whole one.
There's a place near me where I'm longing to be, with my friends at the old country church. There with Mama we went, and our Sundays were spent with my friends at the old country church. Precious years of memory, oh what joy they bring to me. How I long once more to be with my friends at the old country church. As a small country boy, how my heart beat with joy as I knelt in the old country church. There the Savior above in his wonderful love saved my soul at the old country church. Precious years of memory, oh what joy they bring to me. How I long once more to be with my friends at the old country church.
too. That little church in Kenton Baptist where I grew up in, of course, early on, but first few years at Latonia Baptist. And, you've been at Oak Ridge for 30 years. That's a country church, wouldn't you say?
It is. I didn't think in the beginning, but it is. I grew up in the country, but it is.
Yeah, it is. Good people, that's for sure. Well, you know, back on the election here, Randy, I was just looking over here. We had Savannah Maddox and the Michael Fletcher race. And in that race, Savannah Maddox won that race. But Dr. Michael Fletcher presented himself extremely well. But one of the things I said in my prognosis of what was going to happen was that she was a lifetime resident of Grant County. And when you looked at the district that they were running in, you had part of Kenton, a little part of Boone, and then you had all of Grant County and part of Scott County. She grew up in Grant County and was very well known. I never will, sitting down there in the office with Dry Ridge Toyota, the Marshall Auto Group, Rob Marshall, my old friend, and his dad. You know, his dad grew up with my brother Gerald Stephenson and grew up with us over in the Wolf Road area. Bob Marshall, he lives down in Florida now, but he started the Toyota Dry Ridge there. But Rob and I were sitting there having lunch with each other, and I was going over with him what he thought about the races and that, you know. And I never will forget what he told me. He said, well, she's from here and grew up here, and she's gonna do extremely well because of that, and because she's a good candidate. They were both good candidates. And there were two good candidates on the Democratic side. And the former judge, Darrell Link, wound up winning that race. And I think probably because of his name recognition. There was a young lady by the name of Back that was running in that race. She was a school teacher, and I believe at Simon Kenton High School. I didn't find all that stuff out later. She was a very talented young lady. And but Darrell Link, the former county judge, won that in the Democratic side. So they'll be facing off with each other, Savannah Maddox, in the fall. And so we'll keep an eye on that race. But that Savannah Maddox, I told her, and I really mean this, she really worked that district hard, door to door. She's gonna be tough to beat, I'll tell you, because she's a worker and a mighty good Christian young lady, you know. So then we had of course the race where I took it on the chin a little bit, because Lewis Kelly got into the race for Commonwealth Attorney. And of course I supported Rob Sanders over in Kenton County because frankly I've known his family all my life, and I remember him when he first ran for office over there. And I made a little contribution to him, and I told him I'd be for him just because of his father, Bob Sanders, and his mother. And that's the truth. Sometimes that makes a difference, you know. Just like with Terry King Schober. We knew Phil King, and she goes to your church there at Oak Ridge, and Philip King helped you skip to 4-year college over at Northern Kentucky University, introduced the legislation, and lined up the Democrats for that college, and now we have it today. You don't forget things like that. And she, in her own right, is extremely talented. Look at the election results, and that tells you. She won the race by over 500 votes, so that's something. But Linda Talley Smith, bless her heart, somebody says, well, she lost. And I said, no, she didn't lose, and neither did I. Because sometimes, and I know some people might have a little trouble believing this, but God tells you to do something, and you do it, because you have heard from God. And in that race, I know for a fact that I heard from God to help her. Not to win. God didn't tell me she was gonna win, but he told me to help her. And I'll tell you what, she won just by running the race, because she made a few mistakes. And she asked God to forgive her for those mistakes. And he has. And to show you the character of the lady, when Lewis Kelly won the race. She didn't wait. She immediately sent out a beautiful concession letter and offered to help him in the transition, because he'll have no election in the fall. He will be the Commonwealth Attorney, and she will be there until January. And she can make a big difference by being there and helping him in the transition. And her concession letter to him was beautiful and very well written and written with godly principles. And I've heard nothing but good things about him recently from people who know him personally. I look forward to meeting him personally. But I think in the long run, she won because she did what God told her to do, stay in the race. And I believe I won by helping her, because that's what God told me to do. So I'm proud of that. And that race is behind us now. David Martin and Diane Murray. Oh my goodness gracious sakes alive. Can you believe a race like that? And then you had Jennifer Barnett in it. Three people in that race for circuit clerk. And I had gone out and sang for David Martin at his campaign kickoff. I didn't do that because I was against Diane Murray. I did that because I knew him. Kenny Brown, the county clerk, knew him. And Kenny Brown's been a friend of mine for years, and I go out and sing for him for his, call me up, I'll sing for you folks. Then I study the candidates, but that race was won by less than a handful of votes. I'm gonna tell you something, I think it was down to around 37 votes if I read correctly. And it was tight, and so David Martin's gonna be our new circuit clerk in Boone County. And Diane Murray, she has done a yeoman service there for many years, and I know the Lord will be with her in her whatever she decides to go and do, just like he will be with Linda Talley Smith. They're talented people. They will find something to do. They're both very well educated, and they will do just fine, resting in the Lord. Gary Moore, I had him sit right here beside me. My goodness gracious sakes alive, I've known him since he's almost a child, And Biz Kane, where he lived there, worked for Biz for many years, wonderful person. And he won his race, and he was in a tough race. And it's tough when you've been around as long as Gary has been around, because he's been county judge executive for many years now. And you make decisions. When you're in these positions, I try to tell people, you divide the waters the day you get into office, because you have to make decisions. Just like when I've been Deputy Secretary of Transportation or Commissioner of Motor Vehicles or Superintendent of Education, you have to make decisions. And when you make those decisions, you're gonna divide the waters, so some people are gonna be against it, some people are gonna be for it. And you're gonna alienate some people. And that's a tough thing to do, but you gotta make the decisions based upon facts, honesty, and what's best for all the people. And do it forthrightly. One of the things I like about Donald Trump, he's doing what he thinks is best for the country, best for the people of the country. And he's doing it, and he's getting it done. I'm pretty tickled with him myself. And so Gary Moore won that race with Chris Reinersman, but he had his feelings in the race, and he thought his issues were the right issues, and that's why we have elections to choose between folks. Bob Neese, I said that he should remain as county attorney, and I'm in it because listen, he might not remember it. I doubt if he does, because he's probably a little boy, but his father and I were good friends. His father represented me many years ago, and Sam Neese was as wonderful a person as you could ever meet in your life, and a wonderful judge. And his son Bob, I think, is the same way, a very hard-working, intelligent county attorney, just like we have over with Miss Tepe in Kenton County, and what we have in Campbell County. Excellent people. That's why I said it should be returned to office. And he won over a young lady by the name of Teresa Lynn Cunningham, who's also a very talented lady. Those are and of course, what can I gotta say? Sheriff, as old Kenny Price would say, the sheriff of Boone County, boy. I'm gonna have to learn that song. Kenny Price was such a wonderful fella and a good friend. Home with the Lord right now, and I'm sure he's singing in heaven right now. Where's the sheriff of Boone County? Well, the sheriff of Boone County right now, I happen to have endorsed and love him dearly, and that's Mike Helmick. And Mike's a good Christian man. He went to your church at one time there for a good while, didn't he?
One of his deputies.
That's right.
I knew Mike through him.
Yeah. Well, Mike is a wonderful fella, and he won the sheriff's position over Tony Wilson, who, by the way, was another excellent candidate. And he was the chief of police in the city of Erlanger and did an excellent job. Randy Blankenship, a good friend of mine, who, by the way, I'm for. Not that I'm against it, whoever's running against him, but I know Randy. I went and sang for him, tickled to do so. And Randy Blankenship highly said very complimentary things about Mr. Wilson, and I'm sure he would have been an excellent sheriff too. But Mike Helmick's done a good job, and when someone, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And I'm trying to think here now, Charles Kenner and Kathy Hudson Flagg, both of those folks won. Kathy against Justin Bailey, and Charles Kenner against Elizabeth Smith, and then Jesse Brewer beat Charlie Walton. That was the only change in the Boone County Fiscal Court, was Jesse Brewer, and he will do a good job. That will make some new input of ideas into the fiscal court meetings in Boone County, which is always good. Sometimes that's the reason you have these things staggered a little bit, to get some new thoughts in there. And the people decided that they wanted some changes, some new thoughts. So that looks like, well, let me see if there's anything else here in particular in Boone County that I wanted to mention. Of course, David Flagg won the, I think it was constable race, and Kim Baumgardner won that constable race against Charles Ed Shaler, who was a mighty fine man too. And but the big thing here that surprised me, now this is what I was talking about, Patty Platt, who got 42% of the vote in the 4th Congressional District. And this was, they were running for the opportunity to run against Congressman, oh geez, who's our congressman right now? It's slipping my brain. 4th District, let's see here. Oh geez, this is one of those moments, June, I wish I had you out here. Massey, Congressman, not Congressman, is it Massey? No, Thomas Massey. Yeah, okay, I got it right. How could you forget those things? And you'll probably call me up and say, John, my name's Massey. Did you get this straight? But anyway, they were fighting for the opportunity to run against him. And the point I wanted to make was here, which I think is important to the Northern Kentucky people. Patty Platt, what you want to call it, very, very qualified candidate. Got 42% of the vote to Seth Hall's 35%. And Christina Lard got 22%. But the secret there is, look how long Patty won Boone County. And she won some of the other counties up here in Northern Kentucky. But the voter turnout was so low that she was able to be beaten by the gentleman from Oldham County, which is right down in actually Louisville's territory there. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out. And of course, in the state representative in the 60th district there, Jesse Parks got 63% to 36%. Then I already talked about Darrell Link and Susan Back. Susan was a school teacher, and that was Darrell won that race there. And Colonel Owens beat the young teacher from Erlanger. You know, that brought back so many memories for me, because this Ryan Neves, the school teacher, who's the head track coach there at Erlanger, got in this race And I never will forget what I told my wife. I said, I'm laying there and I was reading this about him, this whole story about him. And I said, goodness gracious. I said, this brings back memories. In 1970, I was a school teacher there in Erlanger, and I was the head track coach. And I got elected president of the Education Association and went right into politics. And I said to June, I said, I wonder why in the world that young fella didn't call me. They asked me for some advice or help. And she said, John, I won't say exactly what she said, but she said, nobody remembers you anymore. And I said, are you saying I'm a has-been? And I guess that my ego took a little slap there, you know. Of course, she's good at straightening me out like that, you know.